Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1992 drama School Ties. Now, before I go any further and share any more thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Brian for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, School Ties is a film that, for whatever reason, it didn't really tie that firmly into pop culture when it came out or to a lot of people. And I think that's unfortunate because after watching the film, I think this film deserves more recognition. I think this film deserves more acclaim. And I think this is legitimately a great film. And it's a shame that the film didn't do well in the box office. And it's also a shame that it got such mixed reviews upon its release. And it still has this sort of mixed reception. Like, it's nothing really that special. Like, it's good, but it's not great. And I don't understand that at all. I think this is one of the best films that I've seen that deals with the strife and the adversity that someone might face in a school environment. And this film has an unbelievable cast. And that's the other thing. It's like, okay, you've got Brendan Fraser, you've got Matt Damon, and you've got Ben Affleck all in one movie. And you would think that that would be a film that would have, at the bare minimum, more of a cult following. But you don't really see that. Like, you see some reviews and some articles online, but you don't see a lot of reviews of this movie on YouTube. You don't see a lot of people giving this film effusive praise. I don't see a lot of video essays about School Ties. And I think I really do feel that's a shame because it's a damn good film. It's directed by Robert Mandel, who I would say this is probably arguably his best effort other than maybe FX. He's done some other stuff that's serviceable or decent, but nothing really on the same caliber or level of School Ties or FX, which was arguably his first legitimately impressive directorial effort. And after this, he didn't really do a ton. Like, he did a few other films and did a lot of TV work, but it's not like he was a really highly sought after director after this movie. And I thought he did a really good job directing this in terms of showcasing the prestige and the fall setting and just all this other stuff involving the university in terms of showcasing the best parts of it. It really has this very idyllic look to it. It definitely does capture almost a Norman Rockwell 50s aesthetic, which I know that's the point. It takes place in the 50s, so it's trying to capture that kind of aesthetic visually. And I think Mandel does a marvelous job doing that. Does a good job setting up his shots in terms of the angles and the different perspectives, and uses his techniques very well. Works well with his cast. Gets some really great authentic performances from them, and even in the football scenes, even though some of the sequences look a little cheap, like definitely do look like a little bit more of a low budget sort of thing, they still have this impact to them, this energy that definitely does make them exciting to watch. And it's a film that, yeah, visually it's not some of the finest or the most amazing stuff you will ever see in cinema, but it still has this really nice consistent look to it and style and aesthetic that I feel really does add a lot to this film. And the screenplay is by Dick Wolf and Daryl Poniscan, my bad. And Daryl's a guy who wrote The Last Detail, who wrote the novel that the movie The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson is based on. And he also did a few other things that you might recognize in terms of um, his filmography. He wrote Taps. He wrote Vision Quest before this. He did Nuts. He did The Boost with James Woods and Sean Young, which I think is an equally underrated drama. I think that film is another one of those movies that doesn't get talked about enough. And yeah, Dick Wolf, he's a well-known producer. You might recognize him as one of the guys behind Law and Order. This is based on his actual life and his experiences as a Jewish student at a prep school. And I think that personal tie that Dick has with everything that happens in this film really does make the film resonate so much more strongly when it comes to the narrative. You see, I'm not a devoutly or deeply religious person. I don't really have a lot of my personal identity tied so deeply into my religion. So I don't necessarily relate to it on as strongly of a level as others would, but it's still a very compelling and genuinely upsetting narrative to see unfold because of the way that things are handled, how it lulls you into this false sense of security in terms of Green and his time at St. Matthew's. Now, prior to him going to St. Matthew's, there are hints, there are little moments that might suggest that things aren't going to be all sunshine and rainbows because he gets in a rumble with these greasers who call him an anti-Semitic slur. And there's even some stuff in St. Matthew's where one of the characters, Collins, makes a Jew joke when it comes to getting a good deal on a record player. But you kind of look at that like, okay, maybe it's just a little one off. Maybe there's one bad apple. Then the whole prep school isn't this anti-Semitic, right? You're maybe thinking that it's one of those things, and Green starts to become friends with his fellow prep school classmates who are members of the football team. He starts winning. The prep team wins a lot of games and he becomes popular. He develops and forms a relationship with this girl and he falls in love with her. And yes, there's drama associated with her, with Sally, because of the fact that uh, Charlie felt that Sally was his, even though Sally had never really committed to him. But David falls for her, and Sally falls for him. And so you have this almost storybook fantasy sort of story that's happening. This narrative that's unfolding with David and his girl Sally and what's going on with the football team and they're winning these games and he's ingratiating himself in St. Matthew's. But at the height, at the peak of everything, he scores a game-winning touchdown and St. Matthew's beats their longtime rival for the first time in years. It's the old prejudices that start to bubble to the surface again. Where at a bar, Collins hit one of his friends. He overhears some conversation about David being a Jew, and so then he completely takes that and wields it as a weapon against David. and you have that confrontation in the shower, and then it leads to things like the sign that was put on the wall that had a SWAT stick on it that told David to leave, and things just escalate until you get to the finale where Collins cheats on this exam that would essentially flunk and screw over everybody in the class if somebody doesn't come forward and take responsibility for cheating and breaking the honor code. And he willingly cheats because he feels that he's going to get away with it. He feels that he's going to be able to pin the cheating on David because he's going to use the anti Semitic nature of the majority of the people at the prep school or in his class as a weapon to essentially force David out and pin the cheating on him. And there's a few dissenters, there's a few people like Chris O'Donnell's character, Chris, who's David's roommate, and he's pushing back against the anti-Semiticism, but all these other people, they are firmly standing their ground when it comes to their prejudices, and it ultimately leads to David deciding to go to the headmaster's office and take the fall despite the fact that he knows he's innocent. And that part I didn't quite get because I'm like, I don't I if I was in that position, I don't know if I would do that. But at the same time, I guess I kind of get it because of the fact that if he doesn't do it, I mean, he risks even more discrimination and even more potential harm. And at the end of the day, it ultimately works out in his favor, though, which I really like that. I really liked the fact that this script, despite all the heavy nature of the anti Semitism and all this other stuff, that really starts to come to the surface within like the last 30 to 40 minutes of the movie. I do like the fact that it ends on a somewhat hopeful note where he's let off David because uh, one of the members of the class, who's actually Collins' roommate, confesses and says Collins is the one that cheated. And so Collins, he gets his just desserts. He gets expelled. But because of his status, because of the fact that this is just prep school, this isn't anything other than that, and he has a very powerful parents, he's going to get away with it. And he's still going to go to Harvard. And even brags to David about it in the last scene in the film. He's like, it doesn't really matter. You know that I'm still going to go to Harvard. And you'll always be a goddamn Jew. And then David, he has a good retort where he's like, well, you'll always be a prick. So I like that. I like the fact that, yeah, it deals with these gray areas in terms of, oh, he gets expelled, but he's still going to go to Harvard and he's still going to go on to, have the life or the college experience that he wants, free from prejudice, free from a lot of the same things that David and other people like him have to deal with, but he's still always going to be a prick. So, yeah, for the most part, I think it is a really good script. It does a good job establishing David as a character, making you like him, and then it makes it so you really sympathize with him when everything starts falling apart. I mean, even the girl, Sally, turns her back on him. You thought that they had something going and they had something that was real and genuine, but because he's Jewish, she can't be with him. She just completely cuts him off. And you have a lot of these people accuse him of lying when all he ever did is just not be open about saying that he's Jewish, because he knows about the prejudice. He knows about what would happen. They wouldn't be his friend. They wouldn't want to have as much of a connection with him. He wouldn't have a chance to get Sally. And I know nowadays this prejudice against Jews is not as prevalent in a lot of different places. It still exists, as does a lot of other different prejudices. So I think you could definitely look at the experience that David has at this prep school, the highs and the incredible lows, as a nice microcosm of what it's like to deal with discrimination of all kinds in a school environment. Now, there are a few things about this script that I feel aren't quite up to par with the rest of the elements of the movie that I mentioned at this point. For one, there are some really jarring tonal shifts in terms of humor. Like there's a whole scene where some of the younger prep school kids just play a game of pull my finger, and I'm like, why is there a pull my finger scene in this movie? It just does not fit at all with the tone of the film. And there's this whole reoccurring thing with this French teacher who's a snooty prick, and he causes Andrew Laurie's character McGivern to have a mental breakdown because he rides him so hard. I don't really feel that guy was. We didn't really need that character, Mr. Cleary. Like that felt like something that they threw in there to provide a clear antagonist throughout the first half of the movie, when all you really needed is the bubbling anti-Semitism under the surface. You didn't really need, a clear-cut antagonist here with the snooty French teacher. Like, I don't really feel that was necessary. But other than that, and like I said, some jarring moments where the tone kind of shifts a little too much, I think it's a really solid script. I think it's a really good screenplay, and I think it's got some good messages, about standing up for what you believe in, for your religion, for who you are as a person. And it shows that you can do all of those things and even take the fall, for the greater good. Because that's really what David was doing. David took the fall. He took the blame. He was going to fall on the sword and take the blame for the cheating, because he felt like in his mind that was an honorable thing to do, even though it was a lie, because of the fact that if he did that, he would at least not screw over and cost all of these young men their future. Because for a lot of these men at St. Matthew's, like this is it. Like if they don't pass this prep school, if they do not do it, they do not do well, they aren't going to get to the college that they want to go to. They're not going to be able to progress the way that they want in life. And he just feels that's unfair, that they should have to deal with that blow. So he does the honorable thing in his mind and is willing to fall on the sword. And then his honorable nature still winds up working in his favor in a way where he's cleared of it. But even then, he has the balls to still stand up for himself. After he's let off by the headmaster, he makes it a point to point out that I'm going to use you to get to Harvard, just like you used me to play football. And I think that is just that's another aspect of the script that's just great, that you have moments like that where it just clicks in a stronger way than a lot of other screenplays might, because you have those moments where it makes you think, and it makes you It really resonates much more strongly because that happens a lot. That even happens to this day where colleges and schools use student athletes for their personal gain and so on and so forth. And that's really all that they care about. They care about winning football games. They don't care about whether or not the student is treated well or treated fairly on campus. That doesn't matter to them. What matters most is winning football games. And I feel that's a great line of dialogue. It's cynical, but it's very real. It's very raw. And as good as the script is, I definitely don't feel that this film would work as well as it does without this cast. I mean, Brendan Fraser, this is the breakout role of his career. In the same year that he did this film, he did Encino Man. And I love Encino Man as a goofy, fun comedy. It's actually the first Brendan Fraser film I ever remember watching. My first introduction to Brendan Fraser was as Link, the caveman. So to see him really just nail it when it comes to his acting at such a young age and at such a early part of his career is really impressive. This film showcases that Brendan Fraser always had the talent that he displayed in films like The Whale. He always had it. It was never something that was not there from the start. It wasn't something that, oh, he just found later in his career. No, he always had that. He always had that talent. He always had the ability to be a very capable, strong, serious, dramatic actor. And films like School Ties prove this, as well as other films like With Honors. He was really good in that too. So, yeah, Brendan Fraser is David Green. Just a really strong performance, so many different nuances and layers to it that are just really special. And Brendan just, he nailed it. He did a phenomenal job playing this character, showing his joy and exuberance when it comes to football and winning and falling in love with a girl and having this nice slice of life for once in St. Matthews and enjoying being in school and not getting involved in fights and not being discriminated against, and then at the same time dealing with all of that falling apart and dealing with the discrimination staring him in the face again. And the way that he shows David's pain in those moments is really something else, and it's really good acting. And the rest of the cast is equally as capable. I mean, Matt Damon, and one of his early strongest roles is as Charlie Dillon, who is essentially really the main antagonist in this film, and he plays a really good prick. Like you definitely want to punch him in the face. You want to see him get expelled. And he has that charisma too that makes him a character that you love to hate. Like you don't just hate this guy because he's such a prick. There's more to it. Like you see some aspects of his personality and some aspects of who he is that you see potential in. That you're like, okay, maybe there's some hope here for this guy. Maybe he's not all that bad. But then, you see who he really is. You see him as the bigot. You see him as the just awful prick that he truly is. And Matt Damon does a good job playing both sides of the coin when it comes to that character. Chris O'Donnell's also good in this as Chris. I thought he had some good chemistry with Brendan Fraser. He doesn't really have as much screen time as Matt Damon and Brendan Fraser. Like really, when it comes to this film, it's Brendan Fraser and Matt Damon's movie. And maybe Amy Locane as Sally, like 'cause she also has a considerable amount of screen time. But really, it's mostly Brendan Fraser, Matt Damon, Chris O'Donnell probably gets like the third or the fourth amount most screen time. Um, you have other actors like Andrew Laurie, who I liked as McGivern, even though yeah he's not really the best type of guy either. But there was still a certain fun, just fun energy that he brought to the role that was really entertaining to watch. Uh, Randall Batnikov plays the football team captain. Isn't really in it that much. Don't really have much to say about him. Cole Hauser has a role as Jack Connors, one of the classmates. Amy Locane plays Sally. I thought she was splendid. I really thought she did a really good job. I thought her and Brendan Fraser had some genuine romantic chemistry, and it really was sad that she broke it off with David because he was a Jew. That made everything so much more tragic. Um, Peter Donat plays the headmaster. It's kind of there. Zelchko Ivanek played Mr. Cleary. I didn't really wasn't really that impressed with the performance. Good French. He definitely speaks some good French, but like I don't know, it just felt that whole character just felt like something out of a completely different movie tone wise. Kevin Tighe, he's in this as St. Matthew's' head football coach, but he's not really in it a whole lot. It was kind of disappointing. Would have nice to have seen more of Kevin Tighe. Ed Lauter plays David's father, and it was not. It was refreshing to see Ed Lauter in that kind of role instead of him playing a villain because he tends to play villains in pretty much everything. Anthony Rapp, he's in this as a class nerd, and Magoo is such an unlikable character. Like he's one of the most anti-Semitic characters in the entire movie. And what's ironic is Anthony Rapp would go on to be in Rent, and the character that he would play would wind up being Jewish. Crazy. Ben Affleck, he's also in this as a football player, one of the members of the class, but he's doesn't really have a lot of screen time. But you saw that there was something there with Ben Affleck though. You saw that there was some kind of on-screen charisma that you feel could have definitely led to something more in the future, and it ultimately did. Um, but yeah, really good cast, and the film absolutely would not be as strong as it is without this cast. I know the director he made a point to try to treat his younger cast as if they were like the next Breakfast Club and or the next Brat Pack, and that didn't really pan out. But you can see the potential. You can see why that could have led to something like that for these actors and these performers. Um, the film also features some cinematography by Freddie Francis. Yes, the same Freddie Francis who directed a lot of Amicus horror films and worked on a bunch of other movies. It's a nice shot film. It's, I mean, a nicely shot film. Sorry, can't speak all of a sudden. But yeah, it's a nicely shot film with some nice lush camera work. That definitely does fit the whole Massachusetts setting of the movie. And there are other scenes where it's shot in a darker, more, you know, not necessarily dingy, but grittier tone visually. That definitely does match the intensity of a certain scene or the emotion or the angst. And it's well edited by Jerry Greenberg and Jacqueline Combus. It's not a film that really feels like it's too choppy or too clunky when it comes to its editing. Things are uh, sewn together well when it comes to the film and its structure. And it's got a score from Maurice Jarre, who also did scores for a bunch of different movies like Dreamscape as well as Dead Poets Society. It fits the whole prep school nature of the plot and ties together well enough with the movie. It's not what I would consider to be one of his most memorable scores, but it works. And for a film that's like, it's like 107 minutes, it doesn't really feel like it's something that you want to expel from your Blu-ray player or stop streaming because of the fact that it's just so slow paced and tedious or drawn out. Like, it doesn't really feel like that. It goes by at a good pace. It continually keeps your interest with the different interactions between these characters. You really are compelled and you really do care about David, and you want to see him succeed at St. Matthew's, and you want to see him rise above whatever adversity or whatever uh, issues that he's faced with. And you want to see him stand up against this scrutiny and this prejudice and stand tall and win. And I think that's something that just ties into all of us, that we just want to see people rise above. And I feel that School Ties definitely does provide those moments while still being fairly realistic in terms of how David manages to do that, how he rises above in the context of the film's story. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say about School Ties except thanks for watching my review. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.